So we've talked about during the We Believe era that the only good thing from the situation we're all in is that we get to look back on some great moments, great games, great eras for the Warriors. And so there's nobody better to talk about Warrior basketball or basketball in general than the Hall of Famer Chris Mullin. And Molly, I got to ask you just right off the bat, does it ever get old being Hall of Famer? That's like the coolest thing ever to put in front of your name.
Yeah, Fitz, it is pretty cool. And we just had the 2020 class announced, and welcome and congratulations to them. But, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you talk about somebody else, but I'll take it.
Well, the thing I love about the Basketball Hall of Fame, and you're like the poster guy for this, college career, okay, amazing, St. John's, Wooden Award winner. International career, got a couple gold medals, played on the Dream Team, probably the most famous Olympic team ever. And then NBA career, oh, by the way, one of the greatest shooters the game has ever seen, gazillion points, and all the All-Star appearances. So you hit every single box in terms of being a Hall of Famer. But you've also been a broadcaster, doing a great job now with the Warriors, and then also an executive. And that's what we're going to focus on as we look back on We Believe. You know, having Don Nelson as your coach, and he had coached you, obviously, and you're running the front office, and you've got this team, and, hey, there's a Baron Davis and a Monte Ellis, Jason Richardson, Troy Murphy, Mike Dunleavy, but the team's not maybe what Nelly envisions, and maybe it's just not the right fit of guys. Tell me about the backstory on the Indiana trade and how that all came about a little bit, because Al Harrington, I think, was the target. You had a relationship with Donnie Walsh. Fill me in on some of the details.
Yeah, well, obviously there was some extenuating circumstances with the Indiana situation. They had that the brawl in Detroit, so it was had a huge effect on Indiana's local market. Right, the attendance had been going down, as you mentioned. Fitz, I had played for the Pacers, played for Donnie Walsh and Larry Bird. Had a very good relationship there. We had talked. Of course, you talk with all GMs throughout the year all the time, so we had dialogue leading up to that. I think we talked about Ron Artest at one point. And ironically, a lot of those guys, I had known Ron Artest. And Donnie Walsh is one of those guys, he always seems to be able to do two things at once. Accomplishing his goal, but also doing right by the other team and the players themselves. He was always looking for the right fit. And that's something we all talked about, right? What's the right fit? But Donnie Walsh, throughout his career, illustrious, legendary career, always was trying to do the right thing for him and for his counterpart. So when we spoke, you know, not only did it fit, you know, they had to make a change, and they were giving up two forwards. They needed two forwards. Mike Dunleavy and Troy Murphy were talented young players. They really were, and had great careers. We're at that cut. We were trying to make that next step. We had Baron, who at that point in time was playing at an all-star level. Mm-hmm. And we thought we needed to add veterans that were ready to win now. So Donnie and I did that deal together. As you said, Fitz, I had played with Al Harrington. I knew Al very well as a player and as a person. I thought he'd be a perfect fit for Nelly. And Steven Jackson, ultra-talented player, had won a championship in San Antonio. I relied on Al's intelligence on Steven Jackson. The inside information, right? The locker room stuff, get stuff as a teammate. Al endorsed all of that. So we felt very comfortable bringing those guys in. Baron had a pre-existing relationship with Steven Jackson, Al Harrington. So from that standpoint, it all fit. And then from a on-the-court perspective, we felt like we were putting together a team that Nelly would love to coach, similar to the team I played on for Nelly. Small, loaded with forwards, a bunch of mismatches, can really play fast up and down. Yeah, so the deal at that point in time for us, and Fitz, you were around a long time, right? Sure. Just to get to the play. That was our championship. We got to get this team to the playoff, just break that streak so we can show some progress.
Well, I think the thing you hit on perfectly there, Mully, and as I talk to the We Believe era guys, I try to put it in context for maybe some more recent Warrior fans. You know, the Warriors had missed the playoffs for 12 straight years, would make it with We Believe, and then have 5 more years with no playoffs. So we're talking the one playoff year out of 18 seasons. I mean, you're missing the playoffs 17 out of 18 years. Much like Run TMC is beloved this We Believe thing meant so much because of all that pent-up frustration and the great fan base, but just no reward. And so you make the trade, and then typical of the NBA, now Jack gets hurt, Barron's hurt, and the team's kind of floating along but not really clicking until the night in Detroit where Barron comes back, Jack comes back, Jay Rich is already back, and you guys go 16-5 to finish the season. Detroit was really good then. I mean, that's Ben Wallace, that's Rasheed Wallace, that's Rip Hamilton, that's Chauncey Billups. I mean, that was at Detroit, and the Warriors kind of worked them good. Did you have a feeling that night like, uh-oh, everybody's healthy now. All the pieces we saw fitting are now here. Let's see if we get on some kind of run. What were you, as the GM, looking at that? What were you thinking on that Detroit win and maybe what it might portend coming up?
Yeah, that week right there that you talk about, Fitz, that was our last-ditch effort to make a run, to not give up, to not stop preparing for the draft. As you mentioned, Barron was in L.A. rehabbing. I remember Nelly was getting really down. He was on the road, was calling and I had been through that with Nelly as a player on different levels. I could tell he was really getting to the end of his rope.
Right.
So we dispersed our staff. I sent Rod. I think they were in New York before Detroit, if I remember correctly. Somewhere wherever they were right before Detroit.
Yeah, Washington and then Detroit.
Okay, so I sent Rod to Washington to be with Nelly. I said, just go talk to him. Tell him to hang in there. We're going to make a run. Don't give up. Me and Mitch flew to L.A. to be with Barron, to check up on his rehab. And there's a lot of people would know in the NBA circle, Steven Jackson has that price, not our Steven Jackson. Steven Jackson, the businessman in L.A., has his private home gym.
Right.
I told Barron, meet us there. Let me see how you're doing physically. So we were in the gym messing around. All of a sudden, I started to challenge Barron a little bit. We were shooting around. And all of a sudden, I said, Barron, you're running. You're good. You got to get on a plane to Detroit, buddy. It's the right thing to do. So we got him back together, and that night it clicked. I mean, that's how good Baron Davis could take time off and show up and play. That's how talented he was. And like you said, we went 16-5, squeaked in the last game of the regular season, and really just rode that momentum. And I think all the players, each game we won, they started gaining momentum and confidence. We had good chemistry already. We just weren't on the court enough together.
I think the thing that's interesting is you played Dallas twice in the regular season down the stretch. Now, people know that the April game, Dallas sat everybody. I think it was a mistake. The Warriors killed them at Oracle. And that gave them confidence. But people forget about the game in March where the Warriors won, and it was the real Dallas team. And I was sort of like, wait a minute, Nowitzki, Steven Jackson bothers him, and they don't get an answer for Barron and Jason. And Nelly had coached Dallas, so he knew everything about Josh Howard and all these other guys. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, if this is the 1-8 matchup, Dallas may be, careful what they wish for on this. Did you remember either of those two Dallas meetings in March and April and think the game in the playoffs is all matchups, that it was your mind already working like, okay, if we see Dallas, this could be pretty entertaining?
Well, we didn't have an ability to pick and choose.
Right.
we had to go to the last minute of the last game of the season. But with Don Nelson, in any playoff series, I don't care if you're 18th in the league, he can figure a way out to keep that game close and also manipulate. What was important was the roster now that Nelly had felt really comfortable playing different lineups and putting pressure on the opponent to match up with us. So Nelly's intel and scouting report and knowledge of their roster was a huge factor. And then the players carried out his game plan to perfection. Obviously, we played small on Nowitzki.
Right.
Played him right and tight, made him turn. Every time he turned, there was someone there. And then A.V. Johnson, who knew Nelly very well also. He coached under Nelly. Then you have to decide, do you match up small with all line, which we're really comfortable with. We've been doing it all year.
Right.
And you're not comfortable doing that. Or do you stick to your conventional bigger lineup? And we've got Al Harrington now at the 5 looking at wide open threes. So, and come playoff time, Fitz, and you've seen this throughout your career, once you gain some momentum,
yeah,
I'll tell you what, And I've been at, the last 5 years of the dynasty, and it's been incredible. And the crowds have always been great. But that particular series in Oakland, I'm not quite sure I heard a building anywhere that loud. Any time in my life.
I totally agree with that, Mullin. I think it's the kind of thing where, Don Nelson would sit before games and, at the hotel and different thing, and he would look for people to kind of talk to or bounce things off of. And obviously you mentioned, you've known him for so long, and Rod had known him. And, to me, one of the things that I was asking him about that series, he said, just what you said. If we get Dallas to play small and take Dampier out, we'll win game 1 and we'll beat him in 6 games. And I'm thinking, okay, how much Johnny Walker has Nelly had here before this conversation? But, it was one of those where as soon as I saw Dallas go small, I'm thinking, wait a minute, small with the Warriors, that's right in our wheelhouse. And the game 1 win, what were your thoughts there? Because you mentioned momentum and belief. It was kind of, wait a minute, in Dallas, they won 67 games. We're the 8th seed, barely sneak in, beating Portland the last day. But you get Dallas to play in the Warriors' wheelhouse and win game 1. Give me the Chris Mullin thoughts after that game 1 win.
Yeah, obviously we're feeling really good, but we know we've got to get another game there. We've got to get another game there. If they get 2 in a row, then all of a sudden it switches quickly.
Right.
And with the next, I think we lost the next game, right?
Right. Correct. Came back 1.
Oh, but it was a close game, and they struggled through that game. So now all of a sudden it felt like we were playing our style the whole way. Even when they beat us, we still were playing our Nelly dictated tempo, dictated style of play. And look, when you get a split on the road, you're just looking to come home and use all that momentum. And the other thing too, Fitz, is Nelly had been here several times. He did that with Milwaukee against the Celtics. He upset.
Did that with a bunch of you guys against Utah and San Antonio.
Correct. So this was very comfortable for him. He loved being in the underdog role. Added to it was the dynamic with he and the Mavericks. He had coached there, and all that whole thing. He just flipped and put the pressure on them. And then on the court, he was just masterful. He just did an incredible job. And I think when you see the other team adapting to you, all of a sudden you feel like, you know what, we got them. We're controlling them.
Now, you talk about Oracle and that noise level. I'm thinking of someone, St. John's, Georgetown, all the different games in the Garden, the Dream Team in Barcelona and all the international stuff you've seen, all the NBA games you've ever played. But that game 3, the first playoff game in 12 years at Oracle, the pregame, Mully, people, you couldn't hear yourself, putting a headset on for those games. Jim Barnett's 6 inches away from me. I didn't even know if he could hear me because the noise had that physical quality. As a player, what does that mean? Is it adrenaline? Is it energy? Are you never tired? Is it the huge exultation after a shot's made? Does it make you play harder on D? What does that mean from a guy on the court to have that kind of support and that noise?
Yeah, and you said it, Fitz, all over the world, different venues, Olympics. I played in that arena when it was crazy. That particular 2-week period, it was just incredible. And I think it does. It pushes you to out-of-body limits almost. We saw some incredible shots go in that had no business going in.
1.1, throw it to Barron from midcourt. Banked it in! My word, he banked it in!
And it builds your confidence. I think you just initially have to manage your emotions through those first few minutes and then get down to playing. But then as the game's going on, every positive thing that happens just gets elevated to an incredible level that you feel you can't lose. And I think it has an influence on the referees for sure. I think that's for sure, no question. And then probably most importantly, it puts the opponents back on their heels. Guys start doing things that are unconventional that you don't see them do, missing free throws, turning the ball over, and all those mistakes just snowball into more momentum.
So the Warriors win game 3 pretty comfortably, but game 4, this is you with the GM hat on because it's 103-99, the Warriors win. But to me, right wing 3 by Matt Barnes.
Dropping Barnes for 3. Good! Matt Barnes with the biggest shot of his career.
someone you had acquired that fit right in. You know, people know about Jack and they know about Barron and they know about Jay Rich and Al, but Biedrins played all 82 games that year. But Matt Barnes, he fit culturally. The team rallied. His mom ended up passing away, and the team was all there in response to that. But Matt Barnes hits this right-wing three that sealed that game 4. That, I thought the building levitated. I literally thought something jolted from the foundation when he made that. But tell me about kind of Matt Barnes and where he fit in, because it's a little part of it. He came back to win a championship later with the Warriors, but I don't think people, realize Matt Barnes kind of fit right in there perfectly. What did you see there?
Yeah, well, he was a journeyman. He had bounced around. He was a tremendous athlete. He had a football background, really, really just a tough guy, very athletic. And he had a relationship with Baron Davis. They played at UCLA, right? So there was a relationship there. And then he fit Nelly's type of player. Nelly had no problem playing a guy like Matt Barnes, Rod Higgins, Clint Azubuike at the 4. Right. Because they were going to get open shots. And they were tough enough to, if they did try to post them up, to just battle them off the block and make them shoot over the top. That was all Nelly needed. So Matt Barnes was a perfect player for Nelly to use. And in that series, like you said, Bob, that shot he hit, the emotion of him losing his mom, the emotion of making the playoffs for the first time in 12, all that stuff culminated, and like you said, into an explosion. And I think that shot probably sealed the series.
Yeah. When you look at all of your basketball memories, now, one play here, one play there. I mean, you're involved in, I think, maybe the greatest scrimmage nobody ever saw. Mm-hmm. And that's, the Dream Team, West versus East, with Michael and Magic going at each other and the whole bit. And, that's a whole other, story we could sit down with you forever and talk about. But the Barron dunk over Kirilenko, I don't care where people were. If you go to YouTube, it's got into the millions of views in terms of people rewatching it. Where for you? And you weren't a dunker per se. You hit a ton of big shots, but give me the Chris Mullin view on the Baron Davis dunk over Kirilenko in the Utah series.
Yeah, it just shows you, and we said earlier, how talented and gifted Baron was, and what a cult following he developed here, because he just played out of this world during that period of time. But it just shows you what great player. So it was basically a one-up catch on the elbow, hand back, probably dribble out to the corner, run a little side pick and roll. Baron just had the feel, got by his man, planted off 2 feet, rose up against Kirilenko, who was at the time one of the best defenders in the league.
Yeah.
And just exploded, and just a monster one-hand tomahawk. It was like he went back 6 years in his career athletically.
Right.
I think the exuberation, the satisfaction, because a month to 5 weeks earlier, he was in LA rehabbing, maybe thinking about not playing. And now we're here, we got a chance to upset Utah. That doesn't happen if it's not for just that day I said, like, let's go, man, give it a shot. Just give it a shot. And here we were, like you said, one of the iconic, legendary dunks of all time.
So when you think about your basketball journey, and I love the fact that you're on the pre and post game now for us, because I learn something every time you talk about hoops, and you have that Rolodex of all these memories and all these great players. And I've always appreciated the way you see the game about skill and teamwork and unselfishness. And it's really the best basketball has to offer. Where are the Warriors now for next year in your mind? Give me a little look forward here as we look back to we believe. No legacy team, no dynasty team. When the Celtics were done, they bottomed a little bit. When the Bulls were done, they bottomed a little bit. Magic in LA bottomed. Even this year's Lakers would end 6 straight lottery years. No teams kind of bounced and then went straight back up after one down year. When you look at Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Chris, Eric Paschall, a lottery pick, could the Warriors have that kind of bounce that really hasn't happened in league history?
I think absolutely. I think they're totally set up for that. And, the reason they went down was because of injury.
Sure.
So it wasn't like guys had bad years. Guys weren't playing. Their best players were not on the court. So probably the blessing is with those injuries, they get to recover and come back refreshed, not only physically, emotionally, and mentally, fresh, hungry. And I think what the Warriors have, beyond great players, look, they're all going to be in the Hall of Fame. They've got, Steph, Clay, Draymond, up in the Iguodala. All these guys have had legendary careers. But, and you mentioned earlier, Fitz, the way they do it, the way they play together, the way they embrace each other, the way they welcome different parts each and every season and incorporate them as teammates almost overnight. This past season, with all the injuries, look at all the players that came through. Every one of them played great basketball.
Yeah.
Even if they had no practices. And that's a credit to Steve Kerr and his staff, but also the organization as a whole. They call it culture, but what is having great people in the right roles? So everybody's in their right positions. They can function. There's no stress. Yeah, injuries, we get that, but we carry on. And what they did this year, dealing with the tough season they did, the way they dealt with it, I think sets them up for success already.
Yeah. Hey, Molly, give us a final thought for Dub Nation, for Warrior employees, for people in the Bay Area. You've played more games in a Warrior uniform than anyone in the history of the franchise. You're kind of the touchstone to me because you represent so many different cool eras, and that's why I said I love that you're involved on the TV side now for this era. You've had the player, the executive, you've been a coach, and now you're doing the broadcasting. Give us a thought, just where we are, what it means for the Bay, and kind of where we're headed for Dub Nation and Warrior employees in particular.
Yeah, Fitz, and you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of great basketball, a lot of tough seasons, but the way you've handled it with JB, right? Always putting a positive spin on things, yet dealing with the facts and what is. So, like you said, I've been blessed, man. I've been blessed to be with this organization since I came out of college in '85. Mentored and tutored by Al Attles, Nate Thurman, Don Nelson, Rick Barry, all those jerseys hanging up. Got to meet and know all those players. So at this point in time, we're all the same, right? We talked about when you have a great team, knowing your role. And sometimes, Steph's got the big role. He's got the pressure. He's got to make big shots, but he relies on Zaza setting a good screen, right? They're different roles, but now we all have the same role: stay home, shelter in place, social distancing. Do that for the other. Be selfless. It's not about us. It's about the other person. So our actions dictate what's going to happen to our neighbors.
Perfectly done, Molly. I appreciate it. It made my day just being able to talk to you today.
You're the best, Fitz. My pleasure.